This week we have another extended reading from the Gospel of John. So I invite you, if you prefer to be seated, that is absolutely fine. We're also reading it in a different way today. This is, as Miss Jean introduced, the story of the man who had been born blind, whom Jesus healed. And this lengthy reading is made up of a series of different scenes. So as we move through those scenes, my assisting minister, John Keller, and I will alternate the reading. So every time you hear the reader change, think about what's this new scene going to be. The Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, O Lord.
As Jesus walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, "Go, wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. Then he went and washed and came back able to see.
The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some were saying, "It is he." Others were saying, "No, but it is someone like him." He kept saying, "I am he." But they kept asking him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' There I went and washed and received my sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I do not know."
They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask him how he had received his sight. He said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, then I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath." Others said, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" And they were divided. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened." He said, "He is a prophet."
The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked him, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but we do not know how it is that he sees, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, "He is of age. Ask him."
So, for the second time, they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "I do not know whether he is a sinner. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples?" Then they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses. But as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Here is an astonishing thing. You do not know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born entirely in sins, and you are trying to teach us?" And they drove him out.
Jesus heard that they had driven him out and went and found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir? Tell me so that I may believe in him." Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshiped him.
Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard this and said to him, "Surely we are not blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would not have sin. But now that you say, 'We see,' your sin remains." The gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
How do we encounter Jesus? This is the question we have been considering this Lent from multiple perspectives. We watched Nicodemus, the learned Pharisee who encountered Jesus at night and who struggled hard, but finally accepted the things Jesus said and did, and who he was. We watched the fascinating encounter at the well when a curious, non-Jewish woman met Jesus and wasn't afraid to ask questions and wasn't afraid to listen to the answers. Those questions and answers led her to deeper understanding, and finally she brought many of her friends and neighbors who also were not Jewish to encounter Jesus for themselves. Today, we are following yet another encounter. This time, Jesus heals the man of his lifelong blindness. But this encounter encompasses the whole community. And we consider the varying ways these different groups respond to Jesus. As I mentioned, I asked John to share the reading of this gospel with me to demarcate the different scenes in the episode. I want to step through each one, looking for how these encounters with Jesus made a difference in people's lives. At the very beginning of this encounter, Jesus and the disciples notice the man. Right away, we can see that this will be a group project. It's not one-on-one like Nicodemus and Jesus at night, nor is it like the Samaritan woman at the well and Jesus, who primarily interacted with one another while others were on the boundaries. Here, the disciples play an important role right from the start. They notice the man, and they set Jesus up for his healing and teaching with their question. Here, we are also reminded of the meaning of light and darkness in John. And we're reminded that the man who had been blind since birth has never truly seen light. but he encounters Jesus, and that is about to change. Then we move on to a scene that shows the man's developing appreciation for Jesus and what he has done. The formerly blind man is in conversation with his neighbors, who in this story are playing the part of a somewhat bumbling crowd. They're not sure that this is really their neighbor who has been sitting and begging every day. They are not sure that he's actually was blind. They're not sure how he could have been healed. But they want to understand. And so they're an important part of the story. Now it gets a little more interesting. The next scene is the man and some Pharisees. These religious experts have an interest in what has happened, primarily because this has been an unusual healing in their town and also on the Sabbath, which was forbidden. Again, the man is subject to questioning, which he answers, but his final statement in this scene is the most revealing. He is a prophet, the man says. Like the Samaritan woman at the well last week, the man who had been blind is now gaining more than just physical eyesight. He is coming to see Jesus as someone important, someone who makes a difference. Well, the Pharisees are dissatisfied with what the man has told them, so they seek out his parents for further questioning. But the parents are well aware of how things work in their religious community, and they sense a trap. They acknowledge their son and that he was indeed born blind and that he can now see, but they are not going to admit anything about how that restoration of sight happened. He is of age. He will speak for himself. The parents know that if they admit to believing that Jesus is special enough to have done this thing, they will be removed from the membership rolls of the synagogue, kicked out. Which isn't simply that they'll have to find a new church. This would mean a loss of their place in the community, a blow to their identity, severing of all the relationships with which they order their lives. Society in the first century was communal, not as individualistic as how we live. Relationships with your family and those around you were essential to survival. Even though, if they had affirmed Jesus, they would have been offered a different kind of community, it was a big risk. And I can understand them being unwilling to take that risk. Now, by this point in the story, we can imagine the poor man having gained his eyesight, but being hounded over and over by neighbors and Pharisees. Maybe he's considering whether this new eyesight is even such a great thing. And yet, he enthusiastically assures the Pharisees once again that it is astonishing that he has his eyesight and that Jesus must certainly be a man of God to be able to do something so marvelous. Finally, we hear from Jesus again. He has been absent from the story since way back at the beginning, when he spread the mud and sent the man away to wash it off. But although he hasn't been present in the story, he has kept up with what's been happening. He knows that the man has been kicked out of the synagogue and his community. And I expect he also knows that the man has not been shy about singing his praises. There is an exchange that might remind us of the one with the woman at the well. Do you believe in the Son of Man? And who is he, sir? You have seen him. The one speaking with you is he. And again, a climactic moment. Lord, I believe. Now, believing in the Gospel of John is more than intellectual or emotional assent to the fact of Jesus. It's more than saying the creed, I believe. To believe is to be in relationship with Jesus. So our man, in encountering Jesus and receiving his physical sight, has also gained his spiritual sight, an ability to recognize Jesus as one with whom he wants to dwell. We're left to wonder about the man's parents. Did they ever get the courage to speak up and acknowledge Jesus? We wonder about the neighbors. How many of them might have decided to follow this important teacher, prophet, healer, who will surely lead them to a fuller life? And the Pharisees, well, I don't think that most of them were quite ready for Jesus. This encounter in community has impacted many people and continues to make a difference for us today. Is there blindness in your life that you need Jesus to heal? And how might an encounter with Jesus change you? These are good questions to wrestle with as we encounter Jesus in our world today.